and all the little mosses. Everything you see, they had to build or paint or create, to detail.
O'Brien also made extensive use of matte paintings, flat art that creates the illusion of depth without the expense of building three-dimensional sets. Matte paintings done on glass provide foreground elements.
What you'd often have in your typical King Kong setup is you might have one or two sheets of glass in front of the camera that would have extra pieces of jungle painted on.
For example, vines or the sides of trees or overhanging jungle growth. And the camera actually shoots through that painting onto your set to create the feeling of a deep, dense jungle that just kept going back and back and back into infinity.
Now, in many cases, he didn't use a glass painting, he used an actual built foreground. But it's kind of inconvenient, particularly for lighting, if you have all the layers actually physically built because they have thickness. So if you build, let's say, just the one or two physical elements, the layers in front of them that are just paintings on glass, that means that you can get light in between them, makes it much easier to light.
The matte paintings in King Kong were crafted by a team of skilled artists that included Byron Crabb, Henri Hillink, and a man who would continue to work alongside O'Brien for the next 20 years.
Mario Larranaga was a very good artist in the art department there at RKO. When O'Brien started to work on creation, and he sort of discovered his talents and moved him onto his crew.
Matte painting is pretty rare now, other than doing something as a special project. About 10, 15 years ago, it became digital. So it's a lost art. It's so physical, it's so inefficient comparatively. I really wanted to get back on my computer after I did this, to tell you the truth. So it's a much more efficient, easier way to get good results and make quick changes.
What they did on Kong that we discovered by studying photographs is they not only did glass paintings, but then sometimes they would dress on top of the glass. At the bottom, you'd put a few little shrubs or a little bit of jungle foliage and so on and so forth. So now you had a three-dimensional element that you can light.
And so we could dapple the light, and we could change it very quickly because you're dealing with something three-dimensional and with real light.
For some reason, this piece is scaled so beautifully. Look at that. I don't know what it is. Is it somebody stepped on it? Maybe that's the answer, but, look at how fine it is. Really looks good in there.
Somehow that glass painting technique makes that film look so unique.
And then at the very background, they'd often have a matte painting that was a complete painted canvas that would be the very deep background.
We had our matte painter, Michael Pangrazio, actually do a traditional matte painting.
It's very important to have a good plan, so I would do a sketch and photograph it and project it. Norman Rockwell used the same technique to kind of trace it out and get the composition and then be able to then turn on the overhead lights and then start to paint on it. But the painting is very crude, if you look at the painting, it doesn't look that great by itself, but when you see it on film, it works, and that's a matte painter's trick too. Good matte painting is very impressionistic and very loose.
The various paintings and tabletop miniatures come together on stage to form the three-dimensional environment in which Kong lives.
The typical Kong jungle setup would be a piece of glass in the foreground with an edge of jungle painted around it, then a tabletop with some miniature trees and foliage, and then maybe some more miniature jungle that finally resolves into a painted cyclorama in the background. So these tabletop setups could be, anywhere from 6 to 8 or 12 foot deep.
And the way you make one of these shots work is you actually just look right through the lens and you see, oh, how's this working? Where do we need a tree? And if you need a tree, you just hang it in. Composing the shot was really interesting because if you weren't looking through the camera lens, you had this big matte painting and this glass thing and these tables, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. But once you look through that lens, it's a perfectly composed shot.
It's not a real jungle. It's a jungle of the imagination. It's a very, it's a magical place, really.
These jungles just seemed ready to erupt with prehistoric life, which then Willis O'Brien and his team made happen.